In this video, we're going to begin to build our mix. So now that we know all the fundamental components of an input channel, how can we put them all together to make it sound good? So this one might be a bit longer, but I'm going to work through our different instruments here and I'll let you listen in and you can kind of see the adjustments I'm making. This is starting from scratch. So I've kind of laid out the channels here, but there's no processing happening here. So I'm going to just listen and see what I think needs to happen to it, and I'll make some comments as we go. All right, got a couple songs queued up, so if you've got some headphones, that would usually be preferred, but here we go. Okay, so when we're thinking about building a mix, we need to start at the bottom. And what I mean by that is think of your mix as kind of a pyramid. What's holding it together? Well, for us, and the way our worship style is and things like that, it's typically the piano. The piano is primary, piano and maybe a guitar if that's possible. And then the other kind of string instruments kind of help begin to stack. And then at the top, it'll be vocals. So we're going to start kind of at the bottom here and work our way up. So let's listen to this piano mic and we'll get it sounding good. So that's a pretty good signal. I probably wouldn't mess with that much. Our particular style of piano, it's a Steinway, and Steinways tend to be a little bassier, a little muddier, kind of a muted sound, whereas some other pianos, like a Yamaha, for example, may be brighter. So we're gonna lean into the type of instrument we have here. You hear that kind of a little bit of rumble, a little bit of muddiness. So just to help with some clarity, bring that down a bit. Okay, now let's look for some frequencies that maybe might cause us some trouble. So we're gonna do like we did before, raise this up, right there. Hear that kind of echo whine? We're gonna pull some of that down. Now with this piano, because it's a little duller, we may want to bring, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just how it sounds, but yeah, a little clarity, actually right there, I think. Let's see, let's listen to that. So I like that. I think that sounds pretty good. Here, let's listen. So no EQ. EQ, no EQ. All right, good. So we've got a piano. Let's begin to add the others. So a bass, this is an upright bass and it's an acoustic instrument, but we'll probably end up adding a compressor on this, and I'm gonna listen for the level to try to get that level dialed in correctly. And this is a louder part of the song too, so let's bring this back a little bit here. Okay. For filtering, we're not gonna cut out a whole bunch. We're just gonna lose, because you see where most of the signal for this lives, and actually we don't really want to cut out any of that at all. If anything here, we could use a low pass filter, which runs on the other end here. You could just, that sounds a little too rumbly to me. But you can hear some of the bleed in that mic, and that low pass filter could help cut some of that out. All right, so let's find what might be any problems. Let's just listen here. Something right there doesn't sound very good. I don't like that. Okay, let's cut that down there. Okay. Yeah, it sounds better. That sounds pretty good. I like that. Remember, sometimes less is just more. All right, we're gonna move on to a compressor. And I'm gonna jump to a louder part of the song. There we go. Yeah, not a whole lot happening there. 3-to-1, down at -13. Really just there as protection. You don't want that thing to get too loud, especially in a room. Now, we're listening to this on video, but in a room, it's gonna sound a bit different. So the idea is we gotta use our ears to listen. How does it sound in the room? If it's shaking the glass in here, it's probably too loud, okay? So we wanna be careful of some of that. All right, I think that sounds good. Let's go violin now. Select our channel. I think in this song, she actually doesn't play. Let me jump over to another spot here. There we go. All right, here's a little bit of violin. That signal sounds pretty good to me. Definitely some bleed, but that's okay. One of the things you'll see with EQ that we can do is use the different instruments to occupy different bands in the frequency. So, if you've got like a cello and an upright bass, they're going to be lower on the spectrum. Well, lean into that with a violin, it can live a little bit higher. So we can take out some of that mud, some of the kind of boxiness sounding down here, and allow it to kind of breathe, and you'll be able to distinguish the instruments a little bit better. So let's listen to what that might sound like. So, there we go. Jump back a little bit here. Right there, I don't like that, so bring that down a bit. Okay. All right, let's see if there's any other problems we might want to fix. You hear that right there, that kind of whine? Pull that down a bit, just a bit. So I see this peak right here. I'm kind of curious what that is, what that sounds like. I don't think that's a problem. I think that's fine. Okay. I think that sounds pretty good. All right, so let's see, maybe we need a compressor. Let's go back here. Let's listen in. Yeah, maybe somewhere right there. Just let it live. We don't want to crush it, but enough that in the parts where it gets louder, we can turn it down a bit. Okay, I think that sounds pretty good. So let's put those together. Let's listen. Here's the piano. Great. I That's a great start. We're beginning to see how the instruments take shape and how they sound. Now let's add in the cello to round out the strings portion. And I'm going to turn these back down and we'll just listen to the cello. Okay. I think that's good right there. I was trying to listen to different parts just to hear how it sounds. All right, so let's select it. Let's turn on a filter. And you don't want to cut out all that. You know, that's where the cello shines, so we don't want to cut all that out. We'll let it breathe. So sometimes, you know, you want that low end a little bit, but you don't want to sacrifice clarity. So you can do a little bit of a cut like that, what I just did, to pull out some of the low mid, and then just boost a little bit of the bass there. I mean, we're hardly doing anything to it because it already sounds pretty good. At least it sounds good to me. So, all right, let's listen. Maybe there's a problem somewhere we need to address. Yeah, let's pull out some of that noise there. Some of that's just the room. That's just how the room sounds with all the different sounds. Let's listen, see how that sounds. Sounds good. All right, let's move to a compressor. Jump over to a different part of the song here. There we go. Good. All right, I think that sounds pretty good. So now we've kind of begun to build the bottom portion of our pyramid. You know, we started with our piano, we moved on to our strings. And what I'll do at this point is put some DCAs on them because we're beginning to get a lot of faders here. So what we'll do, I'll show you how to use a DCA. So if we come up here to our top layer, you can see we've got DCAs available and ready to use. I'm going to use 5, 6, 7, and 8 here. So why don't we do this? Let's go setup. We talked about strip assign in a previous video. Let's go to our bottom layer. We've got some open slots. So control, strip assign, bottom layer. Now if we go to DCA, you can see we can grab 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, and let's turn all those up to 0. So a DCA is a digitally controlled amplifier. And what it does is if I have my faders up, and I assign them to this DCA, you can see how there's variation in the volumes here. When I begin to bring this down, so let's say I bring it down 2 dB, it brings all of these faders down 2 dB. So it keeps the ratio of volume, but allows me to control all of these with just one fader. It would also allow me to mute. If I had them assigned, it would mute them that way. So, all right, so let's assign a couple here. I'm going to use, if you want to assign, you just hit DCA and then hit routing. And then you can pick the channel that you want to grab. So I'm going to grab the piano on this one. And I know this is going to sound silly. I'm going to use one DCA for just the piano, just to keep it all right here together. I could throw the piano channel over here if I wanted to. So there's lots of different ways to do things. All right, so we'll select that one. For this one, we're going to do a strings section. So select it and go routing. And then we want the cello, the violin, and the upright bass, which is right there. Okay, and you can see I've got those selected because now if I mute them, the little light comes on here for muted, and that means that they're muted on a DCA. All right, so let's assign these a name. We'll call this one strings. apply, and then we'll call this one piano. Apply. Good. All right, those are good to me. So now we can listen and begin to build a mix, and then we can just use these to turn them up or down. One cool thing that is enabled over here, if you see this soft key is lit up purple, this turns this function on and off. But if I have a DCA and I have channels assigned to it, and I hit mix, over here, this is called DCA spill. So the other screen, the opposite one that your DCA is on, will spill all of the channels assigned to that DCA. So I could be anywhere in the board. You know, I may not be on my layer where everything's laid out. I may be right here, but I need the channels that are on that DCA. If I just hit mix, there they are. I don't have to go looking for them. Maybe I wanted that piano. It's right there and I can grab it. If you want to turn that feature off, just hit 2, and now that spill feature doesn't exist. And actually what you can do with this, so when the spill feature is off, if you hit mix and assign right here, you can assign channels. So go back to our layer, you'll see strings are assigned. Maybe I wanted to throw the guitars in there. I'd hold the assign button, hit mix, you know, let's just throw these in for example. And now you see, so if I turn this back on, now there's a bunch of channels assigned to that DCA. So it's an easy way to grab some channels if you need it. And we're gonna take those back out. So just do that the same way here. So mix, hold assign. That'll remove them from that DCA. Okay, let's build a little bit of a mix here to begin with, and then we'll move on and add the guitars in. And I'm just listening. You know, what sounds good? Like if I've got the violin all the way up here, that's not gonna sound good. You know, what's a good blend? What helps everything sound good together? Okay, I think that sounds pretty good. All right, so let's bring those down. All right, let's move on to the guitars now. Let's give those a listen. Okay, here we go. We'll find a spot where they get played a little bit more. There we go. Okay. All right, I think that sounds pretty good. Let's do the same thing here. Filter, EQ. Hear that kind of weird echo there? Yeah, I think that sounds pretty good. All right, let me back that up a bit. All right, let's listen to our compressor, see how that sounds. I tend to like a little more compressed guitar sound, but you know, it's totally up to taste here. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty good. All right, let's move on to the next guitar. And because we have multiple guitars, I may actually EQ them a little bit differently. So you can see how I left some of that low end here and I pulled a little bit of the high mids out. I may pull some low end out of this one and EQ it differently. So let's listen to that. We'll see how that sounds. Okay. You can already tell this sounds a little more plucky, a little more of the high end. So let's turn on the filter here. Let's jump over to PEQ. Yeah, you don't want to pull it all out because that wouldn't be good. Let's see what we can do here. Yeah, I don't like that kind of weird box sound there, so let's pull that out a bit. And then let's go over here. Pull that down just a bit. And then actually I may even boost just a bit of the higher end here. I think that sounds good. All right, let's listen to both those together, and then we'll add them back into the rest of the mix. Hear that one, and we'll swap them, and then add them together. Okay, and let's bring the rest of this everything back in. Okay, I think that sounds pretty good. So now I'm going to assign my guitars to a DCA. That way they're ready to be used. So DCA, and then if we want to just press mix and assign, we'll grab that guitar and that one. Perfect. So now I can mute and unmute, and I can control the volume independently. All right, so that's all the instruments. I mean, we've basically built a base of, you know, our pyramid where now the rest of the vocals can sit comfortably on top and help bring it all back together, okay? So I forgot to name my DCA here, so I'm gonna do that. We'll just call it GT for guitar, easy to remember. All right, let's listen to some of the vocals and bring them into the mix, and we'll see how they sound. All right, I'm gonna pull these down for now, and let's begin to listen to what we got here. All right, so let's take the two ladies first here. We'll start right here. All right, so filter, PEQ. Something right there doesn't sound good to me. Let's try again. Actually, yeah, I might do a little bit of a boost. And back in. Okay, I think that sounds good. Let's pull those down, listen to that a little bit more. Could use maybe a little bit more gain on that, just to get the signal up a bit. Start back up again here. Yeah, I think that's good. All right, let's check the other one. Filter on, PEQ. There we go. Something right there I don't like. All that sounds fine to me. Let's see about down here, anything. Well, sounds good to me. All right, so let's look at compressor. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, let's add the guys. We'll jump back here to the beginning. We'll listen to them now. All right. So we'll do number 2 first. We're gonna work through that same process here. We're just listening, what frequencies, what do I wanna highlight, what do I wanna cut. Something right there doesn't sound very good to me. See the true and better Adam come to save the hellbound man. And actually what we might do here is add a shelf, a high shelf right there. So we hit the shelf button, and let's just bring up that high end a bit.
Come behold the wondrous mystery, Christ the Lord upon the tree.
One thing I want to be careful of is the plosives. So sometimes when you make the puzz and buzz sound, that'll hit the microphone, and you don't want that to come through the speakers, okay? So what I'll do to kind of protect against that is just take that low end, put a shelf on it, and then bring it down just a bit, but then I don't have to cut out so much of the low end with the filter. So let's listen to that. I feel like that lost a little bit there. Bring that back up a bit. Yeah, I think that's good. All right. See about a compressor. Okay. Maybe somewhere right here just to be safe. I don't know exactly what it's going to sound like yet, but let's move on to the next guy here. Do the same thing, filter, put that filter on there, go to our EQ, and let's just listen. But the grave could restrain him. Praise the Lord. Something right there, I don't like that. What a foretaste of deliverance, how unwavering our hope. Something right there doesn't sound very good to me. Okay, let's do a compressor, say on. We're really just using this as kind of backup here. Let's get a louder part of the song. This is really just kind of backup to bring that down if we need to. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay, so now let's begin to put it all together. First thing we're going to do is assign our vocalist here. So let's grab mix, assign, 1, 2, there. Perfect. And then let's rename this to vocals. Okay, bring all this back up. Okay, I think that sounds pretty good. You know, we've got all the instruments in there. We've got a little bit of, turning, kind of see how I brought the guitars and the strings down so the vocals can kind of live on top and the piano can live on top. And then the guitars and strings kind of fill in there. But everything's distinguishable. I can listen, I can hear it. Now, the next thing that I think would be really helpful at this point is we'll talk about panning. So pan is I can move a signal to the left or to the right. And in our room in here, we have a stereo setup. So if you're listening to a signal and it's coming at you like this, it's kind of hard to distinguish all the different pieces of it because they're all just stacked on top of each other. Well, a pan, actually what it'll do is help you spread out that mix so that when I'm listening, I mean, you have 2 ears, you listen in stereo, it'll be easier to distinguish, oh, here's this instrument, here's this. Now, typically a pan follows placement on the platform. So if the vocalist is over here, then I'm going to pan in that direction. In a live environment, we need to be careful not to pan too much. So if this was a studio, you turn it all the way to the left or right. It doesn't really matter because people have headphones. They're going to listen to it like that. In here, you don't want to throw something all the way to one side because then the people sitting on the other side of the auditorium, they're going to be penalized. They're not going to be able to hear that quite as well. So follow along here as I just kind of begin to pan some of these out. And I think you'll see, if you got some headphones on, how it begins to kind of add some clarity to it.
Come behold the wondrous mystery, He the perfect Son of Man. In His living
So you see kind of what I did there. The piano and the bass tend to be the lower end of things. So I moved piano over, bass over, move the violin over with the bass, and the cello over more with the piano. Then we'll take our two guitars and pan those out. Okay, and then vocals. And you can hear if I move it all the way to the left, that's not very good, but you want to have a little bit of a blend. All right, and that's how you use pan. I think that helped kind of bring some clarity out. You could hear how, if you're listening, oh, that vocalist is over here, this one's over here, that guitar is over here, and that guitar is over here. It just helps it sound a little bit better. And notice, I mean, I barely went past, I mean, I think, left 20 there, right 22 there. I mean, we're not talking about a huge pan here, just enough, just a little bit to just make it that much more clear. So I don't know how long this video went on for, but that's how, if I was looking at this, like say this was a Sunday morning or something like that, and I had to start from nothing, that's how I'd work through it. In a rehearsal, I would try as best I can, as fast I can, in a song or two, to have all these settings dialed in, ready to go for the next one. The last thing I would do is maybe add a little bit of reverb to the vocalist. And so we have that set up, and I'll show you that here. So if we go to layer D, you can see these are the effects. Now, we don't use a bunch of these, and that's totally okay. The one we do have set is this reverb channel here. It just adds just ever so slightly, just a little bit of reverb, and I'll show you how we can do that. It kind of helps make the vocals, I think, sound a little bigger, a little fuller, but not louder necessarily, which is a good thing. So let me play a little bit, and I'll show you I'll show you how to use that. All right, so if we want to send, you'll see the two effects here. So you'll see effects 1, this is the send in blue here, and then effects return, you can see RET right there. This is the return. So back in the day, with all analog gear, you would actually have a physical out or an insert on a channel. It would go out of the channel, it would run to a rack that would have a bunch of effects gear in it. It would go in, be processed, and then that would get sent back into the board. This maintains a similar kind of thing. You can see we have a digital effects rack where all of our effects live. So this is rack slot number 1 there. There's our reverb, and we can change some of the parameters that way. And what we're doing is we're saying, I want to send to this reverb. So if I hit mix, you can see those were already kind of set. We'll pull those down a bit. If I hit mix, then I'm going to begin to pick what I want to send and the level I want to send it at. So what I'll do is I'll turn up the vocals to 0. So that's what's getting sent, but then we don't have to add all that back in, okay? So that's mix, and then add the vocals in. All right, let's turn that off. So now let's begin to play a little bit, and the effects 1 returns on effects 1 here on the effect return. So you'll hear it as I add it in.
Come behold the wondrous mystery in thy
You can hear if I so that's too much. We don't want to be in there. Just enough to have a little bit of a trail to help it sound. Okay, that's off. That's on. I think that sounds pretty good. And I've actually got button 17 here set up to turn that off and on. Yeah, I think that sounds good. So what I'll do is I'll just let these live here, and I'll come back down to where my DCAs are, and I'll use 17 if I need to mute the effect. The reason I do this is because this is on 17, it's quick and easy to grab. If someone has to talk in between a song, then that speech, it's going to sound super weird if there's a reverb going on. So the best thing to do is just be ready to mute it in between a song if someone's going to talk. You don't want that coming through the system. But while you're singing it, it sounds good.